Good morning, everybody. Boy, this is an early start even for me in front of a camera live on a Friday at 8 a.m. Shyamala is hardcore and I support hardcore.
Thank you so much, Lee.
Oh, I'll tell you, voice is the next, it has been, right? The next horizon. And I think user experience folks are going to be very interested in how to make this transition, how customer experience is involved with, voice interaction and conversational AI. There's just so many things tied to this technical capability. So before we get started, I want to introduce Shyamala Prayaga. She is the founder of Digital Assistant Academy, which trains people to work in the voice practice. She is also the lead designer for voice conversational AI for Ford's autonomous vehicle line. And I'm checking my other LinkedIn to make sure that I haven't missed anybody, because I have a tendency of missing folks. So we're going to just field questions. This is our first one. We did not do a big promo on this yet, so we're not sure how many people are going to show up this early in the morning. So we'll keep doing it because we know over time that it will pick up. So now is a great time to start posting your questions. And if you don't know how to do that, just enter a comment in any platform that you're in. Right now, we're streaming live to YouTube and LinkedIn. We might expand that to Facebook. If you prefer something like that, let us know. So, Shyamala, let's start with some questions that I got before this broadcast. And the biggest question is, what are they looking for in terms of customer experience and voice interaction design now? What is defining a good customer experience?
So that's my son. Yeah, just trying to play around. That's it. So yeah, so that's a great question. So I would say when it comes to customer experience with voice, it's way more. Just a second.
Bye.
He's intentionally trying to do that. Okay, Siddhan, bye. You have a great day, okay? So, what's defining a good customer experience in voice design? So, see, voice design is picking up fast, right? And when you talk about customer experience, it's similar kind of things what we do with user experience. Like, how do you reduce the cognitive load? If your modality is only voice and someone is interacting with your assistant, if you bombard them with too much information, that's information overload for someone. So of course, the user experience will not be that great in that scenario. Now, another thing is, how do you give information? So if I'm the first time user and if I am using the voice assistant, it's like, big see for me. I don't know what the assistant is capable of doing. How do you even tell me, what are the things I can do, because I may get stuck. So there are a lot of errors which can happen in voice, especially if users don't know. And we have seen that happening a lot. Like when the user press the push to talk button, now they don't know what to say next because the assistant said, how can I help you? That's it. So now the user is struggling to do anything because they don't know what to ask, how to ask. So similar to how when we design the user experience, we are thinking about how can we make things less complicated for the user. How can we make it easy to understand? How can we make it how can we discover things and stuff like that? We have to think about similar things in voice as well. Like, how do you ensure that there is discoverability of your voice application or your voice feature? If your voice application has 6 or 7 features, how will the user even know, like, these are the 5 things I'm capable of doing? So the conversational designers need to think about those kind of things when they are designing through their voice prompts.
What is the limitation right now for voice interaction? What are some of the limitations that you're finding as you're trying to design these tools?
So part of the limitation is the technology, of course, because we are at the mercy of using the technologies which is available to us. They are great. I wouldn't say like they are not. We have come a very long way from where it used to be. But still there are issues when it comes to limitations. Like the speech recognition systems do not understand a lot of accents, or they do not work when there is a lot of background noise, or even if it works with background noise, the NLU part is not as better right now. Like we're still working on a natural language understanding to make the system work better. But if you look at how the things work, they are not 100% natural at this point. Like you can say whatever and it will pick it. If I said something like, find me that Italian restaurant which is near Pine and Pike Street, maybe the assistant will not be able to do it at this point. So, but we tend to forget things. We tend to, talk like this. We add too many knows, I knows, and all of those things. So these assistants do not really understand or truncate these unknown words at this point. So there are limitations, of course, they are working through those, but I feel those are biggest limitations which we have.
So so it's the technology itself, right? If it's the technology itself, do you have to design one product with multiple language recognition capabilities for different countries? Or do you just assume that people are eventually going to pick it up?
No, so we have to, that's never going to happen. You will not have, like one assistant, which is one English assistant, which will work everywhere. That is the very reason, like when Alexa launched in India, it launched with English, but English is not our primary language in India, right? So Hindi is our language. So they had to think about Hindi as the, another language to add. And now recently, Alexa and Google have started to introduce other languages in India, and Telugu was another language, which is like my native language, because Telugu, Tamil, these are the languages which are like most prominently used in India. So now they are thinking. So if you have to interact and engage and onboard more users, you have to make it multilingual so that people who are comfortable using those languages are able to get and use it.
So now you're going to get a question from a non-technical person who's just incredibly curious about this. So is it a different, when you're using different languages and different accents and things on this platform, is it different coding or is it just the voice? Is it the same technology and programming using a different voice, or does the technology and the programming change with the voice?
So there are multiple parts to this, and this is not one straight answer, right? So you need to understand the basics first of all, when how the voice interaction works. So when you say something, the speech recognition system, the ASR, or the speech to text, will understand what you said, interpret it and convert it into machine readable language, right? So the ASR itself should be able to understand the different languages. So if it just understands English, you cannot use that as the base and say like, okay, this is how it will work. So you have to really make sure that the speech recognition system is multilingual and it understands as many languages as possible. That is when it will able to interpret what the user said, it will be able to convert it into machine readable format, like textual format. Then there is the natural language understanding, which is the NLU part of things, and that is the brain of the entire system. Right. So when you said something, you said like, will it rain, right? Or do I need an umbrella? So this is the part which understands like, okay, you meant you are asking the weather information, right? So again, now if you have converted it into Spanish, and the speech recognition system sent the Spanish version to the NLU, it will not understand anything you said if it does not recognize those languages. So it has to be multilingual in order to understand.
Wow. That's a lot of work.
Right. And the same thing goes with the text-to-speech engine as well. So once everything is done and the fulfillment happens, when you said something and the response is ready for you, the response is in machine readable format, which has to be now converted into text-to-speech, so that, when your primary modality was voice, the output also should be voice. So in that scenario, again, the text-to-speech should be multilingual, because it will be weird if I said something in Spanish and it responds back in English, right? So there are so many different engines working in order to make this thing work, and all of them have to be multilingual. So should you decide to have a multilingual assistant, you need to have all of these engines support those language in order to do it.
That's insane. So the part that you do, Shyamala, are you doing the front, middle, and back end, or what part of this capability do you actually do?
So I don't design the speech recognition system. I don't design the natural language system, or I don't design the text to speech system. But I still work with these. So how? So I design the conversation. So most of the work which I do kind of goes into what the user will say, right? So so in case let's say like we support 5 different skills. One of the skill is, let's say, customer care. There could be a number of questions the user could have related to the customer care. They could have grievances or issues to report, or they just want to know some frequently asked questions like, can I smoke in the car, or things like that. So now we have to design that. Now there are n number of ways the user can ask for the same thing. So I have to use the natural language understanding system to build in the language and the grammar, like, okay, these are the 10 ways, and map it to the intent, because everything eventually is the intent, right? What is the intention of the user? And NLU understands the intents. Uh, so we have to map those things into the system and say like, okay, these are 10 different ways the user can say, ask for the same thing, like, can I smoke in the car, or is smoking allowed, or they can say, I want to smoke, right, or something like that. All of those may relate to the same thing, to the system. So first of all, designing those language models around the grammar around, like a specific intent is one part. And then the second part is connecting to, what is the knowledge source now here. When the user said, can I smoke? I mean, maybe we do allow, maybe we don't allow. I cannot just answer those by myself. So I need to look through the policies. I need to make sure, like, these are things we allow or we do not allow. Like, there has to be something. So I have to work with my stakeholders to understand some of those kind of things. And then ensure, if we are talking about some things, like, for example, if someone asks, how does the assistant see the road, right? Or how does the autonomous car see the road? So I cannot just design something by myself. So I need to make sure, first of all, like, to know the technicalities behind that and how much information can we give. But some of these may also need some legal inputs, right? Or inputs from other teams. So ensuring this collaboration to understand those kind of things is also important. Then the next thing is, once all of those things are settled and we know, like, okay, this is where the answers would be stored and this is how we have to connect, I work with the development team to ensure, we have everything in place. But then comes the bigger part of the role, which is the responses itself. When the user said, can I smoke? Now I know how to do all of these things. We have a database, knowledge source, and all of those things in place. Now tying those responses, like, okay, yes, you can smoke. Now every time if I said, can I smoke in the car, and the response is like, yes, you can, or no, you cannot, no, we don't allow, or smoking is prohibited. So we cannot just say only one thing. So we have to keep it more natural, and we have to make sure there is variations even in the responses. So designing those responses is part of my job as well. Like, what are the different ways the response could be. So it's like, imagine if you said, good morning, Alexa, and Alexa is like, good morning. Every time you say, it's very redundant. So she tries to bring in a little bit of personality through her voice prompts. Like, one day she would say, good morning, today's fact is blah blah blah, or good morning, like something else, right? So she tries to make those kind of engagement. So we need to think about same kind of things, like responses should be varied. We need to definitely make that kind of thing. So we do that, like, create all of those responses, and then we also have to tune it. So now when a response from the system to the text to speech is sent, it is in a very robotic format on by itself. So if something like this, smoking is prohibited in our cars and we have smoke detectors, something like this is in the textual format, it would sound very robotic unless you tune that. And you need to tune it for the text to speech engine. There are SSML elements out there, and some of these engines do allow for a lot of tuning with emotive kind of things like that as well, like empathy, sympathy, or aggression, and things like that. So we need to definitely make sure that we are tuning it properly in order to play it to the user as a human, not like a robot. So there's a lot of work.
Dear God. All right. While you're taking a break, let's say hello to Mindy Powell. Good morning, Mindy. Thank you for joining us today.
Hey,
If you
Wendy.
have questions, if anybody has any questions, go ahead and type it in the. Otherwise, you're getting all these newbie questions out of me, which if you're afraid to ask a question, fear not. I have no shame. I will ask the most elementary questions there can be. So what I'm hearing you say is that all of these things are taken into consideration as you design the tool, right? And whether that voice tool is in a car or whether it's an Alexa or what have you, there are some consistencies that can always take place. But you're designing based on location, language, rules and regulations, laws, all those things. So how do you keep up with that, Shyamala? I mean, so you can't just create this voice product and say, good luck, God bless, it's on you forever, go. As rules change, as things change, as cultures change, how do you keep up with that?
So this is not a website, which you developed and you just deployed it and you're like done, right? Maybe you may have to update the website every now and then, maybe not every day or not every month, but maybe, as and when you have some updates, you would just keep doing those. Voice is an ever evolving product, and you have to constantly keep, improving on it every day. So it's like a lot of work, definitely. Part of it is, constant improvement. Like you have deployed your voice assistant. Now what? You have to constantly look at, the analytics to see what kind of skills are being used the most, what application is being used the most, or feature being used the most, which one is not being used and why they are not being used, or, how long the session lasted and things like that. So there are those kind of analytics which you look through and then try to improve constantly on, like, okay, the user did not use out of the five features which we support, one of the feature the user is not using, and maybe they're not using because they were not able to discover it, right? So understanding those things and trying to improve on it. And then constantly, as and when we are working, we have to keep repeating that cycle. It's like, how you do the software development life cycle, right? You have to constantly keep, it's like agile, right? When you're doing the agile things, you'll see what's working, what's not working, and then, like you do quick sprints and all. It's the same kind of thing. You have to constantly keep working through that loop of, the legal and the other stakeholders as well as you are designing, but always have to be data driven and look at the analytics and performance of your product and keep improving and updating.
So this is kind of when I think about the scope of this and the magnitude of this, it's mind blowing. So, I mean, when you get your car updates, so I'm thinking cars because I know that you work on cars, but anything like, my TV, my box, the cable box, right? There's updates to that happen all the time. So there's got to be these massive storage systems of conversational voice and information. I mean, this is a lot of content. So where is all that going?
So, see, part of the system, like when you talk about content, there are too many things, right? Too many things here. One is, for example, like information related to the vehicle, what you're talking about. Those go in the knowledge source, or maybe you have your own database or something. So you need to have a storage place for that. It could be an Excel sheet. It could be some sort of online voice CMS system where you are deploying and storing all of these things in place. Some of those are not directly your information. So, for example, if I'm developing a frequently asked question for the vehicle, yes, those are things which will be part of the maybe voice CMS or some sort of knowledge base. Some of the things, if I said what is the weather in Seattle, or if I want to know a point of interest, that is not something I have to store. So I have to now work with a third party tool or third party API to provide that information to me, like maybe an app provider. So in those cases, it's their job to give us that information. All we are doing is, making those connections with their API, or making some sort of connection with their system. So there's a lot, and depending on the kind of skill, it will always have different database. It's not like one database where you are connecting to, or one source where you are connecting to. So it's all over the place. So we also have to work with, for example, we have to work with the NAV providers to ensure that what we want is supported by their system, so that we can voice enable or work through them as well. So it's interesting, but ongoing work, a lot of work.
It sounds so easy when you talk to the little box in your room, Alexa, what time is it? And I just, there's so much that goes on behind. It's really mind boggling. So let's see. So we have another question that was emailed to me, and they're wondering about, so your background is user experience, right? That's where you got your start. So how does user experience translate into conversational voice AI design? So where does that overlay come in? Because it's to them, you're focused on content, and they're not seeing how the other pieces of testing, research, and all that stuff falls into place.
So I would say there are a lot of similarities, and like there's a lot of commonalities, I would say. So as a UX designer, I would do the research to understand what the users want, and constantly keep doing the research to understand their needs and all of those kind of things. As a voice designer, we do the same thing. So when we started this project, we wanted to first of all understand how would the user actually, want to use a voice assistant in the car, in the car. So we need to understand, the use cases or their needs as well. So we did a co-creation workshop, like where we simulated the experience and brought a lot of users. So sometimes we are doing those kind of things as well, where we are working with the researchers and making sure, to collect those kind of use cases. So yes, you will continue to do that. You will continue to do the research. But then in normal user experience, you are designing the interactions for a GUI. In this, you are designing interactions for a VUI, voice user interface, where it could be a combination of screen and voice. It could be it could be just voice, or it could be a chatbot, or any kind of a modality, right? So you're still doing the same thing. Now, when you are designing the GUI or the graphical user interface, you are thinking about the buttons, the content, you are thinking about the placement, and you are thinking about all of the interaction. When the user pressed the pop-up, what should I show? And then when the user clicked on delete, what should I show? Should I show them a confirmation saying, okay, are you sure you want to delete this? Or do I just delete it and just give them like, okay, your file has been deleted, and undo this. So what interaction do you decide to do that? Do they, right? The same kind of thing you have to think in the voice user interface as well when you are designing with first-time users, returning users. You are thinking about the same kind of things which you are thinking as a UX designer, like how will the first-time user see something, right? So first-time user, when they are interacting with the voice assistant, what will we show on the screen if we have a multimodality? Like, do we show a list of commands just to get them started? And how do we show the play the prompt? Do we say, what can I help you? Or how can I help you? Or do we say like, hey, hi there, I can do XYZ. Tell me what you want me to help you with, or something along those lines. So you really need to think about those kind of experiences, like first time. Now returning, if your voice prompt is something like, hello, I can play music, or I can give you information about the vehicle, or I can call someone, what would you like me to do? If I'm a returning user, I already know the system capabilities, and if you keep repeating those things to me, it's very frustrating. So now I don't want that. So how do you taper that for me, a returning user, right? And then what do you show on the screen for them? And throughout, when you are pressing something on a graphical user interface, you are getting, feedbacks, constant feedback about, what's happening, what's going on. How will that happen on the voice modality where, you said something? Now, how do I know the assistant is listening, processing, and telling me what it is supposed to? So there are visual cues to think about, the chimes or ear cons to think about, like how do you design those? What kind of visual cues do you show? What visual cues do we show on the multimodal template if we have a multimodal template, and things like that. And then how do we display the kind of information? So if the user said, find me Starbucks, I found five different Starbucks nearby within a 2-mile radius. I cannot play all of them. So now how do I decide to paginate, and how do I decide to play that and to the user through voice and also through the screen? So the unique challenge, I would say, with vehicle is you're driving. So you, even if you get five of that option, it's too much information at once for the user. So you also need to think about not just the cognitive load, but also the driver distraction, right? We have the NISTA rules, driver distraction guidelines, and you can show only X number of information on the screen. So how do you decide? So it's challenging, but as what a UX designer would be thinking about, like some of those challenges and designing, the UI designers also have to think along the same lines.
So who decides how much information can go on a screen before it becomes distracting to the driver? Who makes that call?
We do testing. We just don't do by ourselves. We do our best bet, like, okay, let's put this much information and then try to test it out. And of course, testing is a big part. Usability testing is a big
Yeah.
part of voice design, because you cannot just, deploy something out of the blue. You need to keep constantly testing it out and then playing it.
So there isn't one standard, like the government hasn't said this amount of information is the only amount that you're allowed to put on a screen.
There is there with the NISTA guideline, it says, 8 steps, 21 glances or something along those lines at once, which you can, 8 steps is the maximum. So from the home page to, let's say you clicked on the contact page and then you are searching for someone, that is considered another click. And then you pressed on someone's, that is considered another. And then, the moment, if you're driving and about 25 miles, you have to consider some of those things. So those kind of rules apply to the GUI. But now with voice, there are more things. So with voice, if you have to give the Starbucks information, you're not just giving Starbucks 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You have to give Starbucks 1 and then give the information like the distance and the nearest location, how far it is from my current location, and all of that information. So you need to also make sure, like, how much is that for one person to consume and glance and consume at once when they are driving.
Yeah. Okay. This is a lot. So here's a fun question. Is Alexa listening to me while I sleep?
See, I would say, like, it's not listening. I mean, the way these systems are designed is, yes, you have a speech recognition, you have a voice assistant at home, and if it is not on mute, it's listening to all the conversation, but not recording it, because it is waiting for that keyword for you to say, Alexa, do that, right? So it needs to know what's happening, but none of the conversations are recorded. It's just wait for that catchphrase or wake up word.
So people don't buy that. They're saying that when I say something, that all of a sudden it pops up in my feed of new advertisements for whatever it is I'm looking for. How is that happening?
So yeah, there are privacy concerns as well, because sometimes it happens. I've personally heard stories like that from my colleagues and contacts as well. So they are listening for keywords, and I don't know, they are tightening their security systems now or privacy systems now. But then when you are listening for a keyword, sometimes, some of the responses or some of the things you said may be, like recorded, or maybe, like they got hold of something which is now part of your history, the search history, and you get all of the information. It's like when you're browsing something on the internet, your cache and cookies, builds on to other things, right? So it's not like intentionally they are listening to do these things, but I feel like part of, having the trade-off of having a voice assistant at home is you may end up having these kind of things. But the bigger part is, how do you tell that to the user? How do you inform them, like, something like this is being done? That's where the concerns about privacy and security comes into play. Like, what is your ethical practices, privacy practices, just to ensure, transparency and integrity.
So we've got a question that I think our time is up. that went fast, right? So our time is up, but one of the questions that we did not get to is around, and we can certainly think about this for next Friday, is around the interaction, literally conversational. Waiting, is the car going to be waiting for my next? You said that they were listening to keywords, but can they actually have a meaningful dialogue, right? So where is, in other words, they're asking, where is voice design heading? Is there really going to be, one-on-one dialogue? We'll save that for next week. So I want to thank Shyamala for joining me today, and we're going to do this every week because this is a critical technology for the future. If you've got children, they're not going to are they going to have keyboards, Shyamala? Are keyboards even going to be there?
Oh, I don't think so.
Yeah.
My son started using voice when he was like 3, when he just started speaking, and his like first words were using voice assistant to ask certain things. So definitely, the future generation would be all voice dependent.
So we need to get on board with this. I mean, imagine being in your 80s and not having to be a technically savvy person, and you can just interact with anything in your house, or I think that would be fantastic. So anyway, thank you all for joining. Until next Friday, we're going to make this a habit. Every Friday at 8 o'clock, we're going to talk about voice design. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Thank you.